Joining us now, Chairman and Editor-in-Chief of Forbes Media and co-author of the book Reviving America, Mr. Steve Forbes. Steve, it's great to see you, sir.
Good to be with you.
What do you think when you see the kind of national debt that we have? We've got $2.8 trillion. That's just so far this year for the deficit, and I think we're approaching $26.5 trillion as a national debt. Does that concern you?
Well, what's behind it is what is concerning, and the real question is, what do we do about it? The Democrats want to raise taxes, put on new regulations, which would hurt the economy. The only way we're ever going to get on top of this debt is having a vibrant, growing economy like Ronald Reagan did in the 1980s, or what we did after World War II, where a little bit of spending restraint, good economy. By golly, the debt as a proportion of the economy declined dramatically. From the end of World War II, it fell to almost 75% as a proportion of our economy by the late 1960s before we went off the rails again. So the answer is, what kind of economic environment are we going to create after the elections this year? That's why this election is so significant.
Oh.
Couldn't have two starker contrasts.
Okay, give me the contrasts, if you will, please.
On the one hand, you have the Republicans and Donald Trump cutting taxes, reducing burdens on businesses, so it makes it easier for people to invest and move ahead and create jobs and give people the opportunity to earn more pay. Or the Democrat side, where they'd pile on taxes, raise, for example, the capital gains tax, which would hurt investment, other kinds of taxes, and pile on new burdens and regulations. Regulations, as you know, are a form of taxation, and they cost to this economy almost $2 trillion a year. People don't see it but if you're a business person, it absolutely is a crushing burden. And those regulations are one reason why manufacturing nearly went down the drain in this country. Between 2006 and 2016, literally over 10,000 new regulations were put on manufacturers, and we were wondering why they weren't doing that well.
Yeah.
Very basic.
Well, here's the question, though. Republicans have cut taxes before and run up the debt and haven't stopped the spending. And then the argument on the Democrat side might be Clinton balanced the budget. He did raise taxes, but then you had Republicans in Congress who stopped the spending. So how do you find the right combination now?
Yeah, and not only did they slow the spending down, not as much as we would have liked, but they also cut taxes. You mentioned capital gains. Bill Clinton signed a cut in the capital gains tax. He signed cuts in housing taxes, took taxes off the table for the Internet and other positive things. So for a while, he acted like a semi-Republican. Yeah. And guess what? With a stable dollar, lower taxes, the economy boomed. And so the formula is very clear. Low tax rates, low regulation, just sensible rules of the road, and sound money. By golly, positive things happen.
Yeah,
but
you know, it's amazing that Democrats
just don't want to learn those lessons. They just love spending.
Yeah, and Democrats don't get being pro-business either, because Barack Obama was very anti-business. But I wanted to bring in members of our team of co-hosts today, lawyer and GOP strategist Ford O'Connell, along with Republican strategist and president of Marathon Public Affairs, Jeanette Hoffman. Jeanette, would you like to ask Mr. Forbes a question?
Sure, of course. Well, it's such a pleasure being on the show with you today. I'm from New Jersey, your home state. And I want to bring back an idea that, Bob was talking about in 1996. You talked about an idea that I think really makes a lot of sense, and that's the flat tax. Do you think there's an appetite for Congress to adapt the flat tax? I think it's really fair. I think it's basic common sense that everybody pays the same flat tax rate. Could we ever get to a place after the election where Congress and the president consider that?
The key is going to be the president taking the leadership on this, leaving Congress to its own devices. They'll just complicate the thing even more. They're incapable of doing it. By the way, over 30 countries have adopted the flat tax very successfully. And all it means is you throw out the whole garbage of the tax code and all the attendant rules and regulations. A family of four, for example, would pay no federal income tax on their first $52,800 of income. Would be, in terms of income taxes, tax-free, and only 17 cents on the dollar above that. And you have a regime like that, you could literally do it on a postcard, a few keystrokes on a computer, and by golly, you'd see the economy roar, because instead of spending 6 billion hours a year filling out tax forms, we could be doing productive things like creating new businesses, creating new jobs.
Yeah.
What's not to like?
I'm with you.
Well, accountants might not like it.
Yeah. Well, Ford, did you have a question?
Absolutely, Steve. It's always great to be on the air with you, my friend. Let me ask you the following point. Most voters know that the debt is out of control. They know it's a major problem. But when I talk to voters in Florida and around the country, what I find is, particularly a lot of voters we could win over, they don't understand how the national debt and deficit spending directly and personally affects them. I think that if the Republicans made a much better argument there, I think you might bring along a lot more voters.
Well, the thing to emphasize is that money doesn't come out of thin air. It comes ultimately out of your pocket. And what's so bad about it is it's a way where you don't realize how much they're stealing from you. And so Milton Friedman, the great economist, Nobel Prize winner, was right when he said it's not whether you have a deficit or a surplus, it's how much money, how many resources the government's sucking out of the economy. And the more they suck out, the less that there is there for the people, less there is for productive investment, and we all pay a price for it. So I think people understand. And by the way, the people who love spending say, well, are you going to cut Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare?
Right.
The answer is you don't have to. There are positive ways to deal with it, getting free markets in, patients in control, having younger people control their own Social Security accounts like a personal IRA instead of the politicians controlling it. So it's not root canal. It's going back to we the people.
Hey, Steve, let me ask you about the stimulus plan. I'm not in favor of actually sending out stimulus checks to people. I don't know about enhanced unemployment, but what's your take on this? What are you in favor of?
Well, making a way to really bake in the payroll tax cut, the tax holiday that President Trump did by executive order, so that people's paychecks reflect that right away. In terms of other forms of stimulus, the only reason I would favor doing another round of individual checks, it's a one-time event. Whereas what they're doing with unemployment benefits is having it distorts the labor markets. And in some parts of the country, really perversely. So this way, you give people another round of money. It's a one shot, so it's not forever. And then the good parts, like the payroll tax holiday, where people keep more of what they earn and businesses have more to pay people because the cost of labor goes down. Just one quick example. A person making $40,000 a year annually would receive equivalent pay raise by suspending the tax for a year of $3,000, and the employer would be paying $3,000 less to employ that person. That's a powerful win-win. Stimulus for keeping jobs and creating jobs, and creating more resources for people to use as they see fit.
Now, of course, the danger is that's just deferring it at this point, and you would need Congress to make it permanent.
That's right, and that's, again, why the Republicans should make that an issue. With the Republicans, you're not going to get socked with that. With the Democrats, you know, they just love to find ways to pick your pockets, and when they say, oh, only the rich will pay, the real resources, as you know, in this country are with the middle class. If you took all the billionaires, took all their resources, put aside what it would do to the economy, crashing the economy, destroying all that capital, it would only pay for the federal government for a few months. So it's the middle class is where the money is, and that's ultimately you see in Europe. Just one quick example. Europe has a super sales tax called a value-added tax. The rate is 20 to 25%. Now, think of a 25% sales tax. The next time they talk about free stuff, that's in Europe. In Europe, that's how they pay for that free stuff.
Yeah. Final thoughts, Steve?
I think we have to have a positive attitude, and I hope the president next week lays out an agenda for the second term, including that flat tax, give people something to look forward to, and by golly, I think you're going to have a good November 3rd. Give people something to be excited about, that by golly, we can get this country back on track. People know it's not going in the right direction, and it's going to be worse if the other side wins.
Steve Forbes, thank you very much, sir.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.